Hey, this is Greg with the Chronicles of Aeres. I haven't made a video in a long time, but I decided to start up a new series where I'll be doing short interviews with creators, artists, and musicians across the gaming scene, the independent scene, tabletop RPGs, comics, even video games if I can find them. And giving the publicity that I've shown to the new game we're creating recently on Twitter, which is called Titans of Fallen Earth, I thought it would be pertinent to have our first interview be with Leflair Zone, who is one of the primary artists for the book. He's done dozens of illustrations so far. If you're in the tabletop RPG world and you don't know what Titans of Fallen Earth is, it's our new D6 based kaiju versus mecha game. It's got a retro wave, kind of gritty cyberpunk and post apocalyptic feel. And it's been delayed for about half a year now because I got sick, but it is coming soon, and hopefully we can do a Kickstarter by the end of the year. So I wanted to start by introducing Leflair. He's one of my favorite artists. He's been working on this for a long time. And I'll go ahead and begin by just asking you if you've got any quick notes on your history with the art world, whether you went to school for it, or tell me a little bit about your background as an artist.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. This is
Thanks.
my first interview, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry if I'm not a smooth talker or anything like that.
It's okay.
Quick notes. Well, I'm self-taught artist. I started learning, taking it seriously back in 2016 or so. Before then, I just did little doodlings and sketching and such. But what is now 8 years ago, I felt like I wanted to do something more with it and learn to draw properly. So I spent a whole year, a little bit more than a whole year, just sketching and studying and going to live drawing sessions and such.
Cool.
Doing maybe 4 or 5 pages of sketches per day, I think.
Wow.
And this was before I started with like inking or colors or anything like that. So just sketching, lots of it, and trying to get good as it is. And
Nice.
I did not manage that in just 1 year. I wouldn't even consider myself all that good right now, but it's a learning experience. So you get there slowly.
Well, every time I post a piece of your art on Twitter or anywhere else, everyone thinks it's the best shit they've ever seen. You must be getting pretty good.
And I always consider that, like, there's always someone better out there, of course.
Oh, of course, but you know.
Like, yeah. So
have you ever?
I'm happy that anyone likes it.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who doesn't like it. Have you ever considered doing have you gone as far as to making this like a business, or is it still mostly like a personal hobby?
It's a hobby, I'd say. Of course, I do illustrations and commissions and such. But, I've done the math, so to speak, and to do it full time would require either a lot of commissions per week, or taking a lot more for each commission.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do, I think, without I don't know, big Patreon following or Kickstarter project or such.
Yeah, there's that kind of Kickstarter rush where you have a big Kickstarter, it's over with, you're waiting on the next one, and you kind of dwindle away that money. It can be a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I've seen some artists do very well on quick Kickstarters, and then the project takes a year or two more than expected. Very easy to miscalculate.
Oh, of course. And you don't want to get burnt out doing too much for other people as well.
I don't mind that so much. It's very varied with different illustration tasks and such. Not just mecha, but character illustration and such, which is why this project has been pretty interesting.
Cool. Are you an Apple guy? Do you use a Wacom? Tell me about your setup there.
No, I'm using a PC, and I use a Wacom Cintiq for my illustrations. I started out with just one of those little tablet things where you just draw on the surface. And then I upgraded to a screen, a bigger screen. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
They are good, but I wouldn't call them perfect or anything like that. They are huge, take up a lot of space, and they have little fans that sometimes make noises and such. And of course, they get hot as well.
Right.
And well, I shouldn't complain too much about that stuff, but compared to drawing like on paper or traditionally, it can be slower actually, which might be surprising. But at least when you're drawing in a sort of gritty style, if you call it that,
Yeah, I can see that.
And such, it takes a lot of effort to get similar results as you would just get naturally with a brush. One stroke and you get all the little nice textures and such. With digital, it's so precise that you have kind of work extra to get that. It's very easy to get a sort of digital look if you're using a texture brush where every stroke looks exactly the same, which isn't really what I'm going for, if you can understand.
But the benefit is you've got layers, and layers are good most of the time.
Sure. And I used to like scan, of course, paper illustrations, but if you're going to use a big illustration, you need a big scanner, or you need to like stitch the scans together, and that also takes time. So nothing is perfect.
Right. Are you 100% digital right now, or do you still go back to do paper sketches and coloring?
I say I do start most of my illustrations with paper. I use little post-it notes I have, and that's where I do like the composition and the basic idea. And then I move over to the digital computer.
Yeah, it's a traditional system.
Yeah, kind of. Sometimes I just take like a photograph and then use the photograph for like the basics of the digital sheet. And sometimes I just look at the post-it while I'm drawing digitally.
Okay. So yeah, I can't remember where I first saw your work. I was going to say that it was ArtStation, but I don't think you have an ArtStation.
No.
Yeah, so I think I found you on Twitter because you were posting some things about Kill Witch Kill, and it popped up on my feed. It was related to maybe one of the other artists I have, like Ross Radke or somebody who does comics. And that looked pretty cool. It's, a dark fantasy looking type of project. Some black and white sketches I saw on your website were pretty detailed. And I know your website is a little old at this point. You do a lot on Patreon and some other places, but it did say that you're on Gumroad, so we can plug that at the end of the interview as well.
Yeah. The details on that. Well, I finished that project, one of the ones I actually finished. It's a 300-page comic, so it took a lot of time. 5 years, I think I did it full time.
Wow.
Almost. Yeah. So I drew every single day something for that project, and 1 or 2 pages a week, I think, which isn't a lot if you look at like professional comic artists who do, of course, 22 pages per month, maybe. But I also did the coloring, so that took extra time. And well, I also have a full-time job, so
yeah.
Most
do you do the lettering as well?
Yeah, lettering, everything, writing. So on the Gumroad, I have put up the same thing as on the page. You can read a full comic on the page for free, of course. But on the Gumroad is the high-res version, which I couldn't put up on my site because it took way too much what's called bandwidth for the server hosting.
Yeah.
So I have the high-res version on the Gumroad, and all the behind-the-scenes sketches and such I put together in a little sort of sign book at the end of it, where I go through and explain my thinking and such when designing characters. And little fun details like that.
Well, if the comic is complete, and you've got high-res versions, why not have you thought about just throwing it up on a Kickstarter? Here's a print-on-demand hardcover copy, and just talk about it.
I have looked into it. I just finished it back in 2022, and then I did the high-res version and such during that year. But I looked into like printing and such, and the big problem, of course, is that it is 300 full-size pages in color, which isn't cheap exactly to...
yeah, you want to do print-on-demand for that.
Yeah. And we have a lot of like inflation and shipping problems and such. in the years there. So I'm not sure now how much it would cost to do that 300 pages.
Oh yeah, it's well, they pay for it. So my buddy Victor Gorchev, I don't know if you've seen him on Twitter, but he's in the Netherlands. And he does basically what he does is he offers a voucher for whoever backs the Kickstarter to go print on demand their own copy. So he doesn't have to worry about anything. Like all the people who were supporting him do it on their own.
Ah,
Anyway,
yeah,
just something to
interesting.
think about for the future. So, I've been working with you on Titans of Fallen Earth for a long time. I had originally planned on doing the Kickstarter this month, but I got pretty ill there. I
Oh,
guess my health had been degenerating for a long time and I didn't realize it, but I think we're getting back into the swing of things. And every time I talk to you to collaborate and get some concepts going about something for the game, you slam me with all kinds of reference art and sketches and concepts, and it's like I've never had an artist do that, which is amazing. And it seems like you're like really into like old school stuff like anime, sci-fi, mecha, of course, and Kill Witch Kill has a bit of horror to it as well, kind of a dark and gritty vibe. So, do you have like an extensive history, like watching like mecha shows or like anime? Like, tell me about like your influences there.
yeah. Well, this is one of the toughest questions
Yeah.
because there's so many influences, of course, to talk about. But like, I used to watch a lot of like older shows, anime and such. Like, what is that one called? It was an 80s show. But like a lot of Go Nagai, very gritty, gory stuff. Devilman, and of course, all
Yeah.
the Gundam shows.
Get a Robo Armageddon. I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
all of
one.
those. Every Get a Robo, I think. I might have missed some. And like Tekkaman, if you watch that, Blue Gender, Guyver, of course,
Yep. Yep.
Fist of
I
the
know
North
about all
Star.
those.
Yeah.
I'm a big anime collector with old school stuff. I prefer the cell animated, hand drawn.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's also like the golden age, if you call it that, of mecha shows. Like you have the
yeah,
70s and 60s superhero stuff, and then you come into the 80s with Gundam, and all these other shows start popping up. And they have
uh,
the big budgets and the best, not best, but experienced artists that are very interested in mechanical designs and such. A lot of them, I think, came from like model building, kit bashing and such. So you see that in all the designs, and it's very interesting. And then the crash happens in the 90s, budgets start to disappear, and you have a couple of good shows, of course, like G Gundam and X Gundam, and of course Evangelion comes out then, and
and
Turn E Gundam. All good shows, but you can see that the budget is not there for all the other shows. And then in later decades, you get like a couple of good shows, of course, every decade, but not nearly as many.
the budget wasn't even there for Evangelion in the last two
Yeah, no,
episodes.
no, you can see
Infamous.
that as well, and that was
Yeah.
a big hit later, I think, well,
And
movies and
then
such.
and every show after that had to copy it. There's like a dozen or more different shows that are like blatantly like even Final Fantasy VII like points back to it in a lot of ways.
Was it Final Fantasy VII? I'm thinking about the years when that must have been made, 96 or something. Was that?
It's like yeah, 96, 97. It's like
Yeah,
right on the
yeah.
tail end.
I know like Brain Powered by Tomino, who did Gundam shows and such, was very Evangelion right afterwards.
Right? But anime today just there's some good stuff, I guess. I don't it just doesn't have the type of content and topics that I'm looking for really, like,
I've
the
seen a
light
few like mecha shows come out in the last few years, and they are all, of course, fully CGI, except for Gundam shows, which are
yeah.
higher budget.
I did kind of like Knights of Sidonia despite it being kind of CGI cell shaded. It was
Yeah, that
interesting.
did look interesting, and then manga I know is very interesting to well,
Yep.
science and such.
So is that how you learned how to draw mecha by watching these shows, or did you also like get into manga and other stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd say let's see. I did a lot of mecha drawing back in like 2010-ish, something like that. Yeah, sketches and such. And that was, yeah, that was probably Gundam I was trying to ape. But after that, I've read like what's his name here? The Gundam artist, the original one. Yes, I think his short name is.
Yep.
Yasuhiko. The origin, the Gundam manga. I have a couple of those books, which are very interesting to both read, of course, but also to just the art is fantastic. He's very organic with his inking.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. You mentioned in a few references the classic British sci-fi show UFO from 1970.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a big influence for you there?
I wouldn't consider it like a mecha show. Well, I guess.
No, but like definitely is sci-fi.
Yeah, it has
design.
like submarines and spaceships and everything. Yeah. Well, that of course, all those like old shows are very interesting because they usually have nice design language, and they have all these ideas that they can't maybe really do fully.
Right.
They don't have the budget for it, but yeah, it's a very interesting show, that one. I got into that one is more like an XCOM angle for me. Have you played that?
Yeah, I love XCOM. It's classic.
Yeah. And of course, they are based on that show in particular, but also that show is linked to Evangelion. That link, with
I've seen like charts and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's interesting that those two worlds exist together.
My favorite sci-fi show will always be the X-Files. That's just
I haven't watched that one, which is weird for me. But I've watched like Stargate and the Battle Star Galactica show and the old one too. But I haven't watched the X-Files for some reason.
You get sucked in. It's really good.
Yeah, I should find it someday.
So you've kind of become not necessarily known for drawing mechs and mecha, but you've definitely, you post a ton of them on Patreon. People are starting to associate you with that. Is that your favorite theme at this point, or do you like to go back to the dark fantasy, or what are some of the ideas you like to explore the most?
Lately, I've been doing 50-50, I think, like a mech 1 week, and then I do some dark fantasy stuff, and then I go back and do some mechs and so on. I like to do both, and of course, you can combine the two. I don't think they're exclusive as themes or genre, I guess. But I like doing both, and it's like mixing it up a bit. I consider dark fantasy more organic, although I guess you can, of course, draw very organic-looking mechs too. So
yeah,
it's more like what kind of project you want to do. I have, as I maybe mentioned, 7 projects or something on my little notebook to-do list, which I've been working on for the past year, I guess. And some of them are dark fantasy, some of them are mech or aligned with that. And I'm just not sure yet. I think I'll find something, an angle to go with there, but and one project to focus on, which is the hard part here. Like all these ideas, and then try to focus on just one thing.
Sure. You mentioned earlier that you usually start the conceptual process by sketching on like notes or post-it notes, and then you move on to eventually developing that digitally. Do you have like a specific method in your head for when you're designing like our NPCs? Like you've already done like a dozen characters, like human and mutant or cyberpunk characters for us, and they're all completely different. Where do you get your inspiration for things like that?
Well, the process might be like similar, I guess, but any illustration or drawing like that design can start from any place. So sometimes we know roughly what we want to do, right? And sometimes it's just come up with something, or just have like one word or a couple of words to go with. Like, is this a officer kind of a character? Is it an old character, experienced character? And then you can sort of brainstorm the ideas there, which direction to go with. And for mechs, you can start instead with shapes, right? Like you
Okay.
have maybe an idea for a military and industrial looking machine with I don't know, lots of piping and gears are showing and you have extra armor on them and such. So there you have like the theme for the mech, and then you can just go with some interesting shape first, which is where the post-it notes come in. And I just sketch out like, is it a thick, heavy mech, like a sturdy
Yeah.
thing? And then it should probably have some sort of big central shape. The torso is, and maybe like impressive shoulders, strong arms and such. And maybe a sort of squat posture that it's distributing its weight properly and looks like it can take a punch. And after that, like you have the basic shapes down, then you can start to sort of sculpt out or put in ideas for details. Like I don't usually start with details that I want in. Maybe a weapon, like this mech should use a big axe or a big hammer or something like that. And then the body will flow from that to support the weapon. So it looks like it fits with the design and it's strong enough to wield it. Or if it's like a flying machine, it's big boosters or big like helicopter blades or something, so it can fly. And it's not too heavy to fly. Well, of course, the mechs, so they are like realistic, but they should look the part.
Right. I mean, they're probably too heavy to fly, but
Yeah,
you can
big enough
design them in
booster,
such a
so
way that it has, I guess, verisimilitude within the setting. So
exactly.
it looks real, even though it wouldn't work in real life, and that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah. And I've seen like, and this might be an old inspiration, but if you played like the Armored Core games,
Yeah, I played Armored Core. I'm more of a front mission guy. I
Front
like
Mission,
it.
and I played the, let's see, Front Mission 2 and 3, I think I played.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, and I don't know if you played the Heavy Gear games back in the 90s.
Yep, Heavy Gear, inspired by Votoms.
Yeah, and Shogo, which I also think had like, both those could transform, right? Heavy Gears and Shogo. Like you
Right.
could have some sort of vehicle form. And in Armored Core 1, which I played back in the day, like PlayStation 1 demo disc, you could choose between, like, you had like spider legs, you had your tank mode, tank treads legs, and you had normal walking legs and chicken, legs. So that's also a good place to start with a design, like what kind of locomotion, what kind of legs should it have,
And
and then go from there.
of course, the original, I mean, probably the flagship for the gaming world is still going to be BattleTech. Um, Such a huge influence, even though it did itself took from Macross. I think
Oh,
they
yeah.
actually got sued for it back in the 80s. I'm not sure.
It's a complicated relationship. As I
Yeah,
understand it, they got the rights for like parts of it to distribute in America and the West, but not to sell the toys or something like that. They like to split up the rights, so it gets really messy.
yeah. Do you
But yeah, you
play
can see that
the?
in a lot of the old designs there, like the Warhammer, I think it's called, and the Tomahawk, and a couple other designs that they are very close, of course,
Oh,
but
very
still
close.
different style.
Do you play the BattleTech tabletop game or any other war game for that matter?
Not the tabletop game, but I did play like Mech Warrior 2, 3, and 4, the Mercenaries
Yeah, those are
expansion.
great
Yeah.
classics.
And the recent, what was that one? The online one, Mech Warrior Online, maybe it's called. Oh, yeah, and the Mech Warrior Tactics one, which is very good.
Yeah, there's a BattleTech starter set that came out pretty recently that's pretty cheap. If you ever are in the store and you see it, I would recommend picking it up because it is a fun game, very influential as well.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but it's always been like that here. That different places have like different gaming scene, right? And it's
Right, yeah.
a small country, so usually we just get like the biggest things, like Warhammer 40K, or you have Magic the Gathering and such. So there's not always like a big gaming scene for the little niche mecha games. I'd love to play like Heavy Gear or something like that, but assembling an army and all that takes a lot of space and time, and then you have to find someone to play with.
There's the Swedish, not version, but almost as popular as Dungeons and Dragons, which was Dragonbane. Or I'm not.
Right? Dragonbane's called. I mean, I'm used to the name Drakar and Demoner, which is
Yeah, that's what it's called.
yeah, it's called. Well, it translates pretty much the same. So dragons and demons. And I played a little bit of that back in the day. It's an interesting one. It has like those little ducks. With
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
That
Every
reason,
Swedish RPG have the combat ducks.
it's a little weird. I don't. It's a thing, I guess. Maybe something from mythology. I haven't looked into it too much.
I'm not sure. I think it might just be like a Donald Duck connection.
Maybe.
It's pretty big here, you know. Those comics
Yeah.
sell a lot to every kid here. They sell like little pocketbooks with hundreds of those comics.
Oh yeah, but I'd imagine that over there, just like here, most game stores are going to be Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, those are the two biggest ones over here anyway.
I've actually been to the biggest such store in Stockholm here. Been a member of that one for a while. Not right now, but back in a couple of years back. And yeah, they had a huge room just for Magic the Gathering, and then you went to the back rooms, and there you had like Street Fighter arcade games, and you had
Oh yeah.
like your tabletop board game groups. And I don't actually remember. Well, yeah, they did have a room for like Warhammer stuff, but otherwise it was maybe some Star Wars, you know, those little what's called like Imperial Assault.
Oh, I
Back when
remember
the
that.
Fantasy
Yeah.
Flight games had the license, they published a couple of good ones, I think, but no huge gaming scene for such things.
Well, maybe in the future when our book comes out, we can see it at the
Yeah,
game
maybe.
store in Stockholm. Of course, it's in English, but that's okay. I'm
Oh,
sure English is fairly widespread there.
yeah. There's a couple of big like tabletop and RPG stores here, and they sell, of course, or publish all those English gaming books.
Have you had to overcome any real major challenges? Like going back to the art world, can you tell me something that really was a head scratcher for you, something you worked on for a long time, you were glad to finally see it finished?
Oh yeah, well, oh yeah, a couple of illustrations have been pretty hard. I think the big hangar scene with Bello, I think is well, the full
Yeah,
name was. Yeah, that one took a month, I think,
that one's
from
one of the best
concept.
ones, though.
Yeah, of course, the best ones take time. But I also didn't work on that one like constantly because we go back and forth. So I get a little bit of input from you, what you like, and I go and dive into references and try to come up with something and work each area out like with details and such. So I wouldn't call it hard, that one maybe. I remember that the first weeks there we just with coming up with the perspective. That one was challenging.
Yeah.
Perspective to use.
I like the consistency. I mean, you've been working on this for a long time. Usually, what happens is if you have a project that's taking that long, the early illustrations are going to look different than what you're doing now. But so far, that has not been the case, which is great. It's going to be a very consistent throughout the book. And I personally have nothing but good things to say for your work. And I'm glad you're still working on that. Do you have anything else planned for the future, personal or otherwise, aside from the Titans game?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I have those 7 projects, like I like to call them, and one of them is like a mini comic I've been working on. I've made like half
Yeah.
of it in the last year, which is like a Vorton's mini comic fan thing, which has been pretty fun. I think I've done more illustrations for that one than I've done actual pages, though, so that's a problem.
Okay.
And otherwise, I have a couple of like RPG ideas. I wouldn't call them RPGs, but like almost like board games, I guess.
Yeah.
A couple of ones that I'm trying to chisel out some sort of more detail into. Right now, it's just the basic ideas as sketches. What else do I have cooking? I do have a big like dark fantasy comic I do want to do, and I've been doing illustrations and sketches for it, but it's a hard one. I'm trying to like come up with the basic plot structure, and that I've been working on for like a year now.
You could
But
do an
I'll get there eventually.
Oh, for sure. You could do an art book as well. I think that's something that a lot of people might be interested in.
Yeah, I've noticed like a lot of good artists do that. Like it's just maybe 30 illustrations that have like the no words or like speech bubbles or anything like
Right.
that, but cool scenes, character illustrations, all that, like the idea of this world, these characters in it, which is always
Yeah.
fun.
Maybe we could put something like that together as a stretch goal. We'll see.
Yeah,
Um, all right. Well, I think you've been gracious enough to answer some of these questions and give us an insight into your creative process and where you came from. And I'm glad you're continuing to do great work for RPG. Do you have anything? So you can be reached in a bunch of places. Your number one, I would recommend patreon.com/Leflair, Leflair. And your Twitter is Leflair Zone. So
yeah.
twitter.com/Leflair Zone. Check those out. I would recommend signing up for Patreon if you do enjoy artwork, especially with all the detail and background information that you give and how you conceptualize the sketch, how you created the character. That's all very cool to read. What are some of the bonuses that you get with different tiers of your Patreon?
Oh, right. I'm terrible at like marketing that Patreon,
Oh,
but there's a lot of content in there. I've done hundreds of posts and such. Yeah, every week pretty much I post like my behind the scenes. So I have all the sketches and the inks, and well, sometimes I do colored stuff too. But like all the ideas and pre-work before I complete an illustration, I post on the Patreon along with like a big breakdown. I call it a breakdown of like my
right.
thought process and the flaws I see and what I can improve and how to think when trying to make illustrations like that. If you want to learn yourself or just interested in like the process. And then sometimes I have posted like little tutorials and such as well for coloring or like composition and such. Whatever I comes to mind, basically, and I
Yeah.
can have the time to break down in detail.
It's definitely a good benefit. So definitely check out Leflair if you're interested in anything sci-fi, mecha, like cool, kind of dark and gritty type of artwork, comic book style, but also a little bit dynamic and diverse. You can check me out at aereschronicles.com. Now, all of the links I've been describing will be in the description of the video as well. Aeres is spelled Aeres, chronicles.com on Twitter. It's my Twitter handle, and the chroniclesofaeres.com is our website. We don't have an official Titans of Fallen Earth website. Need to start working on that. But we do have a small live action teaser trailer on our YouTube channel, so I will post a link to that. And remember to subscribe to us if you would like to see more interviews or videos, behind the scenes interviews, and stuff like that in the future. I'll be doing more now that I'm feeling better. Did you have any final thoughts, Leflair, before we hang it up?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, the
Have a good
same.
day.